Hadrosaurs are not always the most well-represented of the dinosaur groups, but they were among the most widespread and common of all known dinosaur clades. Their lack of representation is most likely down to their appearance, or at least the first glance of it. They were herbivorous ornithischians, but lacked the long necks of sauropods, the flashy weaponry of the ceratopsians and the stegosaurs, and the defensive armor of the ankylosaurs. They didn't have big teeth or claws, and many of them are represented in the media as prey animals, simple, dull reptiles that existed purely to feed the more interesting theropods. This could not be further from the truth. The hadrosaurs were a massively diverse group, and you'll have certainly heard of some of its members already. Creatures such as Parasaurolophus, Maiasaura, Tenontosaurus and Corythosaurus have made the rounds in popular films, television shows, and books, some more than others. With their well-known fossils or bizarre skulls, these are the exceptions to the rule. Many other hadrosaurs do tend to sadly go unnoticed by the media. Indeed, hadrosaurs were, in reality, spectacular animals. Some of them grew to extreme lengths, in some cases up to 17 meters long, but more on that later. These creatures were prominent mainly on North America, Europe, and Asia, but remains have also been unearthed in South America, Africa, and even Antarctica, with over 50 distinct genera of hadrosaurs having been described by paleontologists since the mid-1800s. These dinosaurs all vary greatly. Some of them have bizarre head crests, which may have been vibrantly colored to aid in display or communication. Many of them were able to utilize these crests to amplify their vocal calls, which may have been able to travel long distances across the land. Many species possessed unique duckbills, a phrase which you have likely heard to describe these animals before. This toothless beak projected out in front of the face, which possessed huge tooth batteries. These teeth were fused together to aid the dinosaur in chewing tough, fibrous plant matter, and were frequently replaced as the animal went about its life. In today's video, we will be exploring these dinosaurs in great detail, traveling to each and every continent in which they thrived, usually throughout the late Cretaceous. We will be taking a look at the variety in hadrosaur forms, looking at how they lived and what they look like, dipping into their discoveries along the way. Join us as we meet one of the most diverse groups of reptiles ever to live, the hadrosaurs. North America, alongside the once connected Asia, has provided us with something of a major hadrosaur hotspot over the years. After all, the most famous hadrosaur of all was described from Alberta in 1922, Parasaurolophus. This dinosaur, with a name meaning near-crested lizard, roamed the wilds of what is now Canada and the United States throughout the final stages of the Cretaceous, from the Campanian to the Maastrichtian. It was a 10-meter-long browser of leaves, twigs, and pine needles that thrived in large numbers across the time it lived, and you almost certainly recognize it from pop culture. A common sight in dinosaur books, films, and television shows, Parasaurolophus was known for its distinctive crest, projecting from the back of the skull for, in some cases, nearly 2 meters. The exact function of the crest has been the subject of much debate over the course of the years in which it has been studied, with often comical results. Some theories in the past have ranged from the crest being a snorkel to help the creature breathe underwater, to an extension of the olfactory system, permitting the creature an excellent sense of smell. One theory, slightly more ridiculous in nature, even claimed that Parasaurolophus used its crest to help it breathe fire. No doubt an effective weapon against theropod predators, but a nonsensical and make-believe one nonetheless. In reality, Parasaurolophus used its bizarre head appendage to resonate calls and cries, perhaps helping it to increase the volume of low-frequency sounds to communicate with other members of the herd. It's not just Parasaurolophus that made the continent of North America an iconic spot for hadrosaurs. Several other species you may have heard of in books or television shows were found throughout the continent. Maiasaura is perhaps the next most famous hadrosaur to call North America home. A 9-meter-long giant, known from several deposits ranging from Alberta through to Montana and as far south as California. If you don't recognize the name, you might recognize the crest. Maiasaurus was particularly unique, with a tall, rounded section at the front, with a spike-shaped appendage jutting out from the back. Maiasaurus is a good example to use when discussing the most commonly accepted theory regarding the function of hadrosaur crests: display. Like modern birds, with their elaborate plumages and crests, it is theorized that the crests of hadrosaurs, Maiasaurus included, in life were vibrantly colored, with striking patterns and hues adorning both their faces and the elaborate adornments on top of their heads. Several different species of Maiasaurus are known, as is the case with various hadrosaur genera, and differentiation of the crest coloring may have helped individuals recognize their own species among others. Perhaps the crests were shown off, or flashed back and forth to indicate the will to mate, or to warn family members about encroaching danger. As many hadrosaurs grew, their crests became more elaborate and developed, which often helps paleontologists identify the rough age of the specimens they uncover. Perhaps different crests had different uses, just like the beaks and plumages of modern-day birds. As with many paleontology-related fields, it is hard to know for certain without a living, breathing creature in front of you. Another commonly referenced hadrosaur is the equally famous Corythosaurus, which was both closely related to and lived in the same area as Maiasaurus. Equal to, if not only slightly smaller than Maiasaurus, this dinosaur possessed a more simple-shaped crest, a basic curve on top of the skull. Scientists think that this might have been to make the dinosaur more lightweight, or to produce a different kind of sound. Another hadrosaur misconception is their stance and gait. Once depicted purely as bipedal creatures, most hadrosaurs in fact preferred to walk closer to the ground on all fours, but they were likely able to temporarily resort to a two-legged stance when circumstances required it. Plenty of famous North American hadrosaurs actually lacked crests altogether. Two big ones are Maiasaura and the entire clade's namesake, Hadrosaurus. We'll start with the former. Maiasaura, which translates into English as good mother lizard, is named for the excellent preservation of its nesting habits. Paleontologists Jack Horner and Bob McKellar led the research here when they traveled to the Two Medicine Formation in what is now Montana in 1979. During the expedition, they found a series of 14 baby hadrosaurs mixed in together in what they theorized had once been a large circular hole in the ground, a nest. Maiasaura was named for this discovery on the basis that it likely took great care of its young. In fact, many dinosaurs probably took good care of their young, but this was by far the best evidence of this known to science at the time. Roughly 100 meters away from the nest were the sparsely scattered remains of the mother, the skull of which was almost a meter long. 6 Maiasaura nests were soon discovered near the same location as the first, implying that these dinosaurs form colonies when nesting, all within a few meters of one another. Nesting in groups probably helped the dinosaurs defend themselves against danger. There is safety in numbers, after all. Horner and McKellar's findings were revolutionary. Not long before this, dinosaurs were depicted as sluggish, brutish monsters. But this was concrete evidence that dinosaurs took care of their young, forming extended families from their herd mates. We can assume that many species of hadrosaur may have acted in this manner. The other famous genus of crestless North American hadrosaur mentioned earlier was Hadrosaurus, the poster child of the clade. This creature has, in the past, suffered from being depicted as a drab, mundane, featureless herbivore. But recent artist impressions have seen the animal in a more adventurous, speculative light. Vivid colors, spiny adornments, and a bulky frame have made this a very interesting genus to explore. Initially named in 1858, these new reconstructions have taken a long time to come to fruition. But this was likely a remarkable creature in life, as it stormed across the plains of late Cretaceous New Jersey. We call it a crestless hadrosaur, but the skull of this creature is still unknown. So perhaps out there somewhere, there is evidence that could change everything yet again for this iconic herbivore. That still doesn't cover the famous, or relatively famous, hadrosaur genera of North America. The vast western continent was home to a gold mine of other well-known remains, from the mighty Edmontosaurus, which is thought to have migrated in huge herds across the wetlands and forests to the west, to a Titan, the duck-billed giant portrayed in BBC's seminal 1999 paleontology documentary, Walking with Dinosaurs. The latter was named for its bizarre, flat snout, alarmingly similar in shape and form to modern-day ducks, geese, and swans. Elsewhere, the gigantic Sauropods was moving around the west coast of what is now Canada and the United States of America. At around 11 meters long, This huge herbivore is occasionally depicted in dinosaur books and lived alongside the tyrannosaur, Albertosaurus, one of the few creatures in the region that could have done it any harm. There are additionally various hadrosaur genera that aren't often mentioned in books or other popular media. Some of North America's lesser-known stars of the hadrosaur clade include creatures such as Gripposaurus, a large hadrosaur known from Montana and Utah. It's known from several different skeletons, one of which was found with the bones connected at the joints, as they would have been when the dinosaur was still alive and roaming the wilds of prehistoric America. Examples of more southerly hadrosaurs include the 10-meter-long Corythosaurus and the smallest of the American hadrosaurs, Claosaurus, which was just 3.5 meters in length. These dinosaurs were found as far south as New Mexico and Texas respectively. Traveling south now, via Central American land bridge, and into the deepest reaches of South America, we have the chance of unearthing some of the most obscure hadrosaurs in the fossil record. The few hadrosaur genera known from this vast and wild continent are not well documented, so there is not much information available known of them. But what we do know is intriguing. Ceratopsians, the first of the South American finds, existed in what is now Argentina throughout the Campanian and Maastrichtian stages of the late Cretaceous. It was related to sauropods hadrosaurs found in North America, namely Parasaurolophus and Corythosaurus, the latter of which bears the most resemblance to Ceratopsians. Of the hadrosaurs known from South America, Ceratopsaurus was the first, named by Michael K. Brett Sermon in 1979. It is possible that the descendants of Ceratopsaurus, its shared ancestor with Corythosaurus, for example, may have passed through a temporary land bridge or land connection at some point in the Cretaceous period. The reason we say temporary is because there really aren't many examples of hadrosaurs having been found in South America. They were much more of a northern speciality, so it's likely they trickled down gradually, with a handful of species forming in the south. What's even more remarkable about Ceratopsaurus is its size. It was only between 3 and 5 meters in length, making it one of the smallest known hadrosaurs. Aside from the similarities with North American sauropods hadrosaurs, little is known about the specifics of Ceratopsaurus's appearance. But perhaps future discoveries will change that. The dinosaur itself appears as mysterious as the surroundings it lived in. The geological layers of rocks the dinosaur was found in appear to have moved around greatly over time, making it hard to pinpoint its specific range. Scientists' best guesses suggest that the dinosaur lived in floodplain environments, with fluctuating wet and dry seasons. Various sauropods are known from the same locations. This relatively little animal would have stood underneath the shadows of giants. Another South American hadrosaur genus, Willinacaceae, is even more of an enigma. Also a sauropoid dinosaur that would have wandered into South America via a potential land bridge. It was first described in 2010 from a series of fossils from various individual dinosaurs from the area in order to create a more complete picture of the animal. The issue came 6 years later, when, in 2016, scientists concluded that most of the Willinakaake fossils used in this process were not Willinakaake fossils. These fossils were reassigned to the genus Bonapartosaurus. So Willinakaake may have never even existed. Add on to this that the original fossils were so poorly preserved that scientists don't even consider them a good enough reference to use in identifying future finds, and it's not looking up for the existence of this mysterious creature. Although the curtain may be closing on the validity of Willinakaake, the future looks bright for South American hadrosaurs. A new genus, the tongue-twisting Maiasaura, was named in early 2022, also found in Argentina. At 9 meters long and 3 tons in weight, this was potentially the largest South American hadrosaur. But still, in the infamous Argentinian land of giants, it was by no means the biggest dinosaur on the scene. As we cross the Atlantic to the continent of Europe, we encounter yet another diverse array of hadrosaurs. Very few of the genera known from the European continent have held much sway over popular pieces of paleomedia. But the discoveries made there have been no less intriguing as the ones that have. The Lambeosaurines, those bizarre crested lizards we met in North America, have made it to Europe, but their numbers were beginning to dwindle towards the final stages of the Cretaceous, the Maastrichtian. Ornithischians was a late Cretaceous hadrosaur known from this time from Spain, measuring just over 5 meters from nose to tail. It is known from partial remains, so the creature's appearance has been inferred from similar dinosaurs discovered in the region. But it followed the typical Lambeosaurine body plan. 4 sturdy legs support a massive body and a long horizontally held tail. The face was tipped with the classic duck-like bill, and an elaborate hollow crest sat atop its skull. What made Ornithosaurus particularly special is that it was a Lambeosaurine hadrosaur, in a world which was, at this point, dominated by sauropods. It's possible that Ornithosaurus was the last of its kind in Europe when the Great End Cretaceous extinction event took place. Prior to the advent of this dinosaur, Lambeosaurines were plentiful in Europe. Parasaurolophus existed in Spain prior to Ornithosaurus, which grew to sizes over 6 meters when in its subadult phase, which is remarkable to say that it lived in an island habitat. Appearing just before Ornithosaurus was the Lambeosaurine Dinosaurus, a creature that would have just experienced some crossover with the former. Dinosaurus inhabited what is now Catalonia in Spain. With the elaborate hollow head crest and bulky body, this was a textbook member of the group. One Lambeosaurine hadrosaur genus that did potentially cross paths with Ornithosaurus was Canardia, a dinosaur that may have migrated from Asia into what is now modern-day France, while it gradually evolved. It is possible that Canardia groups passed into Spain, where they would have met others of their clade, Canardia's preferred habitat was coastal regions, lagoons, tidal marshes, muddy channels, floodplains, and wetlands. Perhaps it even occasionally found itself face to face with the island-dwelling Parasaurolophus. We don't know too much about the other wildlife that shared the region with Canardia, as only a crocodilian tooth has been unearthed from the Marne des Aux Formation associated with the hadrosaur bones. Traveling to the middle section of the formation, to the Cassinu locality, however, yields different results. The Canardia, from this point, were sharing the lands with a diverse array of early birds, freshwater mosasauroids, crocodilians, amphibians, and even sauropods. Prehistoric Europe was a paleontologist's wonderland, a vast expanse of diverse, mysterious faunas. The second continent known for harboring a gold mine of hadrosaurs is the vast and biologically diverse Asia. The majority of the world's hadrosaurs were located either here or in North America, and relatively few species in comparison ended up migrating elsewhere. Again, a handful of famous faces can be found in Asia's hadrosaurs. You may have heard of Stegosaurus, or at least seen a picture of its marvelous skull in dinosaur books. Boasting one of the tallest and most peculiar crests of all dinosaurs, it was once referred to as the unicorn dinosaur, due to the forward-facing horn-like protrusion making up the bulk of the crest. In reality, the dinosaur was much more lambeosaurian in its looks. The crest projected backwards, not forwards, and was large and hollow, most likely for amplifying sound or for display purposes, like its North American cousins. It's likely that with headgear like this, Stegosaurus could have made some of the most varied and bizarre calls in the animal kingdom, potentially a series of trumpeting bellows, which would have carried out far and wide across the Cretaceous landscapes of Asia. Another name you might be familiar with is Olorotitan, another lambeosaurine, this time with a triangular, fin-shaped crest that would have been a useful tool when it came to display. A 12-meter-long giant, Olorotitan was a native of Russia's Amur region, a vast expanse which is today coated in chilly evergreen forests just north of China. In Olorotitan's day, however, the region was warm and covered in huge swaths of marsh. Many genera of crocodilian and turtles are associated with Olorotitan finds, indicating that this dinosaur may even have spent time wallowing or wading through the water in its hunt for vegetation. A much more familiar face, perhaps not in name, but in form, is Tyrannosaurus. Take one look at this 10-meter-long Chinese hadrosaur, and you'll recall a creature we've already met, Parasaurolophus. Extremely similar in form and function to the North American superstar, Tyrannosaurus is instead named after the Greek mythological character, Charon, the ferryman who would transport deceased souls across the river Styx to the land of the dead. Tyrannosaurus was given the name in response to the location its skull was found in, the southern bank of the Amur River, which divides China and Russia. It wasn't alone here either. Many hadrosauroids are known from the same location and time, including Sahaliania and Wallagasaurus. All of these creatures may have occasionally come under threat by the infamous Asian tyrannosaur, Tarbosaurus. Of all the Asian hadrosaurs, one takes the prize for the most spectacular of all. Weighing in at 16 metric tons and measuring a monstrous 15 to 16 meters from nose to tail, Shantungosaurus, native to China's Shandong Peninsula, was the largest hadrosaur to ever live. Rivaling some sauropods in size, a running theory is that this dinosaur could get so big as it was attempting to outgrow larger and more dangerous predators. Scientists can't say for certain the reason for its massive size, but patterns have been observed in other herbivorous dinosaurs, such as Gigantoraptor, a massive signathid theropod from late Cretaceous Asia. Alongside the hadrosaurs we've covered, a vast array of lesser-known genuses persisted and thrived across much of the continent. Gilmorosaurus was resident in Uzbekistan and Mongolia. Oralosaurus was a Kazakh speciality, and Kerberosaurus was also found in Russia's Amur region. But the main area of success for hadrosaurs was China. Equijubus, Manchurosaurus, Bactrosaurus, and Tanius are all Chinese hadrosaurian dinosaurs, all of which thrived throughout various stages of the late Cretaceous. The majority of these are Saurolophine hadrosaurs, a group that was particularly successful towards the end of the Mesozoic. As it stands, at the time this video was published, there is only one genus of hadrosaur that managed to make it to Africa. Ajnabia, which translates to stranger, is a lambeosaurine known from the late Cretaceous of Morocco, having been unearthed in the Ouled Abdoun Basin in 2020. Alarmingly, it was one of the smallest. At just less than 3 meters long, Ajnabia was tiny for a hadrosaur. But why was it the only hadrosaur genus in Africa? Africa was, at the time Ajnabia existed, cut off from the rest of the world, making it extremely difficult for any non-aerial creature to make it there. Surprisingly, there are several different theories, all of which have been recorded before in the natural world. It is possible that sea levels continuously rose up and down as the Cretaceous progressed, and the dinosaurs may have been able to migrate over at a time when it was particularly low. There is also a chance that temporary land bridges may have formed, like the one currently connecting Africa to Asia, and the dinosaur was able to walk over as part of a population. The most absurd sounding, and yet highly possible take, is that the dinosaur may have swam over, or even drifted over, on a mat of natural debris or vegetation. The same thing happened in the Cenozoic era, transporting African monkeys and rodents over to South America on huge patches of drifting matter. Maybe the dinosaur was even already dead when it began to drift, and was only carried to Africa by the tides. There are numerous suggestions like this, all of them as intriguing as the dinosaur itself. Antarctica is a tricky one. Scientists are well aware that hadrosaurs lived on the continent, but they are yet to have named a genus. How do we know this? Teeth, or rather one tooth. One cheek tooth was discovered in the Antarctic and subsequently described in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology by Judd Case, James Martin, Dan Chaney, and Marcelo Ruggiero, explaining that the creature was unearthed from sandstones dating back to the Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous. It is thought that maybe the dinosaurs were able to migrate over from South America to Antarctica, or perhaps through other means, such as the case with Ajnabia in Morocco. The authors note how rare dinosaur finds are in the late Cretaceous of Antarctica, but there are cases of theropods, ornithopods, and ankylosaurs existing in the same region. This is just another piece of the puzzle in restoring Antarctica's lost world. We hope this video has helped in shining some light on an often underappreciated group of dinosaurs. The hadrosaurs have been famously misrepresented over the years as sluggish bipedal beasts, as we mentioned at the beginning. But it is these persistently awe-inspiring discoveries that help us learn more and more about them. It's perhaps helpful to liken them to some of the large herbivores that roam the wilds today. If the sauropods are an analog to giraffes and elephants, and if the ceratopsians are akin to rhinoceroses and hippos, perhaps we can look at the hadrosaurs as the bovids, cattle and antelope. Granted, even the smallest hadrosaurs were larger than some of the largest bovids, but the lifestyle and ecological specialities are very similar. These were social creatures that lived in huge groups, which may have spanned vast areas. They took good care of their nests and young, defending them from both predators and the harshness of the Cretaceous elements. They took part in elaborate crest displays, most likely, and were vibrant colored to help them attract mates and communicate. And after all of these revelations, there is still much we don't know about the hadrosaurs. Plenty of genera remain mysterious, their secrets buried in missing fossils. Further still are the hadrosaurs we haven't yet dug up. Surely out there for such a widespread clade, there are many surprises hiding in the rocks.